This is a much less tenuous frontrunner position. He's outpolling where Trump was in April of 2022 for the 24 primary. JD 2028. Vance emerges as early GOP frontrunner. This is our today story, hot off the press. Vice President JD Vance has a wide lead over other potential contenders for the 2028 Republican presidential nomination. I thought this would be the result, and it turns out it is exactly what I thought. But we do have the numbers. Crosstabs from both the Democrat and the Republican set. This is the Democrat primary numbers that we ran at the end of June. This was right after Gavin Newsom pissed off everybody and made himself a resistance hero of the left, and also right in the middle of the Israel-Iran stuff. Maybe not the best time for it, but it is what it is. Let's start with Kamala Harris, though. And a lot of people probably didn't see these numbers, and so it's a good refresher. Let's start with Kamala Harris. Looking ahead to the next presidential election, it would have been better for Democrats to have Kamala Harris as their candidate again, or Democrats should find another presidential candidate. Only 23% of the U.S. electorate wants Kamala Harris to be the Democratic candidate again. That's bad. That's really low. That's a lower number than the combined excellent and good rating of Congress. People do not want this woman back. And yet, there's a paradox that we're going to have to explore. 61% say they should find another presidential candidate for 2028. 16% are not sure. I think a lot of those will probably be Republicans. No gender signal. And actually, 18 to 29-year-olds are like, yeah, cool. Kamala Harris, 41% of them. 49% say somebody else. This is, I think, that Brat Summer Instagram effect. This is the actors and actresses mattering to young, mushy minds. I really do think that. 65 and older do not want Kamala Harris. Probably a lack of intellectual substance, I think, is probably what's going on. Black voters like her most, but it's a wash, 42 to 42. And actually, Hispanic voters, 41%. That's pretty high. Maybe they're just happy. Actually, only 29% of Democrats want Kamala Harris back. 29%. But 58% say no, 65% of Republicans say no. Very, very few independents. As we all know, famously, she didn't appeal to moderates at all. She didn't even try. More conservatives want Kamala Harris back, though, which is kind of wild. I think that's they know she's a loser signal. Very, very, very few liberals want Kamala Harris, even though she was a very, 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 very liberal candidate. Not much of an income signal, a very big education signal. The less educated, the more likely they are to want Kamala Harris. That's pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating. People with graduate school degrees, they do not like Kamala Harris. It's really flat across Trump approval. That's wild. And then it's a wash. Kamala Harris, 25%. Kamala Harris voters. Donald Trump voters, 23%. Okay. Now, interestingly, a very large portion of the electorate thinks that they're voting in the Democrat primary. This is like, what is that? 66%. Obviously, most of them won't. This is self-ID, self-filtered. So we can look at it by people who say they're likely primary voters and also by party among people who say they're likely primary voters. That's what I have highlighted here. And here's the Democrat numbers. Among all primary likely voters, Kamala Harris gets 22%, Newsom 12, Shapiro 12. Everybody else under 10. Pete Buttigieg does next best at 8. I don't understand that at all. Cory Booker tie with AOC. That's kind of wild. Tim Walz only 5%. But look at 18 to 29-year-olds. Kamala Harris is leading again with them 39% to only 16% for Gavin Newsom. And yet, as a female, she is not really outperforming among women much more than men. Only 4 points. That's kind of interesting, too. 39% of the black vote, and everybody else gets under 10, though. But here's the Democrat numbers, 32%. Everybody else gets 13% or lower. Gavin Newsom's numbers have been rising now. If he, continues this trend, I don't know if he'll be dangerous to her yet. At some point, her numbers are going to go down and his numbers are going to keep going up if she doesn't change something. She's really stayed out of the limelight. I mean, you just look at her name, for instance, on Reddit Politics. There's really been no news out of her at all. People on the left just aren't talking about her. It's like she's a non-entity. And you have Newsom and AOC out there, Cory Booker, doing all of these filibusters on the Senate floor. They're getting attention and their numbers will go up. But the thing is not that much. And she was the vice president. She was a presidential contender. She did come really close to winning. She had $3 billion in name recognition. And so I think they're stuck in a situation where until she really opens her mouth again, or until there are some really, really, really backhanded attacks on her, she's going to stay the front runner. And she's not the front runner in the betting market. We'll take a look at that. Gavin Newsom with only 13%, though. Now, obviously, these other people are splitting the vote, right? And so the question is, as they come out and drop out, Tim Walz, he's not. There's no way. So what happens? Is he going to back Kamala Harris? Is he going to back Newsom? Are the people going to listen to him? That's what we have to wait and see. And then Shapiro and Buttigieg, that's just, it's like, with the purchasing the kid and with the Shapiro, with the stuff going on in Palestine, I just have a hard time. I think they will get donors. That's the thing. I think they'll get funding. I think they'll launch a campaign, but I just don't see it going anywhere. I mean, it would have to be an act of God. I don't know. So anyways, among independent identifying likely Democrat 2028 primary voters, among independents, Newsom wins by 14 points to 10 points for Harris, 11 points for Shapiro. Shapiro is perceived to be a moderate. And so obviously, if you're going up against him, I guess the attacks would be to show that he's not. But he's leading almost among moderates. Kamala Harris 19, him 17. So she almost completely loses her lead there. All right, let's look at the Republican numbers. That's what we're supposed to be talking about tonight. So a pretty similar number of people also say there's a huge overlap here. Also say they're going to vote in the Republican primary, but very likely among Republicans, it's 81%. Somehow 39% of Democrats think it's very likely too. And it was almost an identical reversal here. 75% of Democrats say very likely in the Democrat primary, 38% of Republicans. It's hard to know. Some of them are not lying. A lot of people, this is self-ID. I'm not pulling off the voter file. Some of these people actually did go vote in the Republican primary as Democrats. They might re-registered. They might have an open primary state, and they just went and voted. I mean, some people just drive by a place that says voting today and show up, and it's an open primary. They go in and vote. But, Nikki Haley was getting hundreds of thousands of votes in places like Colorado. And so we're in a really weird political situation. We'll get to the bottom of it, though. Here's the numbers. Among all likely self-ID'd Republican presidential primary voters, J.D. Vance wins handily, outperforming Kamala Harris by a lot, 35%. To Ron DeSantis is 10%. To Marco Rubio's 10%, Youngkin 3, Ted Cruz 4, Tulsi Gabbard 2, Tim Scott 2, Rand Paul 5. Obviously, I could have put other names here, but we had a limit, and these are the ones that we decided to pick. And I think these are the right names, and so I would say these are the big three, and I really don't think the question order has much of an impact here. J.D. Vance does worse among 18 to 29-year-olds than among other age brackets, but he does very good with 30 to 39-year-olds. Ron DeSantis is doing better, but not quite beating him among 18 to 29-year-olds. That's really the only major thing by age. The 65 and olders love J.D. Vance, 39%. Everybody else is under 10. Doing well with white voters makes sense, but here are the Republican numbers. And compare this to Democrats. Among Democrats, Kamala Harris was getting 32. Republicans, J.D. Vance is getting 53%. This is a much less tenuous frontrunner position. And he's outpolling where Trump was in April of 2022 for the 24 primary. In the 24 primary, first head-to-head, first GOP primary matchup in that April, Among Republicans, I'm pretty sure we had Trump winning 48% to Ron DeSantis 24%. He's doing way, way, way better than that. Ron DeSantis went from 24% now down to 11, only getting 11% against JD Vance. Marco Rubio tying him with 11%. Nobody else beats 5%. So I just don't really see it happening for any of these people. Like, this is not, like, I don't think this is a very competitive primary at all. It looks like it's JD Vance's to lose. Now, obviously, a lot of stuff could happen. Maybe he doesn't get the nomination. Maybe he gets convinced not to run. Maybe the establishment does a coup. Maybe one of these people cures cancer. Like, a lot could happen. But I look at the DeSantis camp, and he's just chugging away down there in Florida, doing stuff. You know, he's not going to be there that much longer. He's done a lot of good stuff, according to people who live in Florida. I wonder how much more that's going to affect him on a national stage, because I don't see him picking really big national fights or getting out there and making a really big name for himself. He looks like just a pretty good capo for the Don, just going out and doing hits, you know, being a loyal member of the team who had a little bit of history in the past. I think that's fair to say. And the same thing with Marco Rubio. Everybody says he's doing great. Yeah, he looks like a solid member of Trump's team. And that's fine. But that isn't, in my opinion, going to help him compete with JD Vance, not as the vice president, but as the vice president with almost a 5x advantage here. So you wonder how much he really can improve himself. Now, will JD Vance mess up? Maybe. Will somebody find opposition research on him? Maybe. Will he get hit by a bus? Like, I don't know. Like, any of this stuff could happen. But right now, it's fair to say that a lot of that stuff is unlikely. And the Republican base is going to continue to be MAGA aligned. Did not say MAGA. I said MAGA aligned. And as far as I can tell you, the person on this list that I think most closely matches the MAGA mentality is JD Vance. I think that he is a business-minded economic populist that understands the way that corporations, the machine, politics screw everybody. Keep in mind, DeSantis, okay, he's been a governor for a few years. He, he wasn't leading major corporations. He was a Navy JAG officer, is my understanding. It doesn't mean he's not smart. It doesn't mean he can't put together a good team. But governing an easy state, I just feel like my kid could govern Florida. You know what I mean? It's like the most, anyways. And then Marco Rubio, again, doing a great job. I don't necessarily think that converts into an ability to gain ground. Will he do great? Yeah. So we'll have to see. Then it just comes down to the campaigning. What happens to Trump? Maybe people will turn on Trump. I don't know. Maybe things will go haywire after the 26th election if the Democrats win, and there will be blowback. Hard to predict. But this is a huge, solid win. This is what Trump's numbers looked like about a month and a half before everybody knew this is over. And that happened fast. We went from April 22, Trump only winning by 24 points, to the following year, it was up to, I want to say 40. And then 2 months later, it was in the 60s. He was beating DeSantis like 70 to something in the teens, something massive like that.